Hi, good morning. We'll go ahead and get started. We've got some United States senators here with us who are on a different voting schedule than those of us on the House side. My name's Rob Woodall, and with all of these folks back here on the House side, and with Senator Saxon Chambliss as the lead sponsor on the Senate side, we reintroduced the FairTax this year, and out here to talk about the FairTax today. The President's invested a lot of time in the Buffett rule conversation, a bill that was pointed out in Charles Krauthammer's article on Friday, that even if it were in effect this year for the next 250 years, longer than our republic's even been in existence, it wouldn't even pay for the deficit that was created under Barack Obama in 2011. The FairTax is about a brand new way of doing things. It's not about sowing division, it's about sowing hope and opportunity, and we have that chance today. It's my great pleasure. Again, we've amassed more co-sponsors on the FairTax as we introduced it this year than ever before. And on the Senate side, leading that charge, my colleague from the great state of Georgia, Senator Saxon Chambliss.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks to all my colleagues for being here today. You know, this is tax day once again. It happens to be April 17 this year. Normally it's April 15. It's our goal as sponsors and promoters of the FairTax to turn April 15 into just another normal, average day in the lives of the American taxpayer. And if this president's really serious about tax reform, if this president is really serious about getting our fiscal house in order, then he'll take a strong look at the FairTax and get on board with what we know to be a majority of Americans. Because as all of us go around the country, and all of us are from different parts of the country, we hear from our constituents on a daily basis that we need a fairer, a simpler, and a less complex tax code. And the best way to do that is rip up the one we've got, throw it away, and start over again, and put in a truly simple and fair system. And the FairTax is exactly that. It will allow everybody to dictate by themselves individually how much they want to pay in taxes to the federal government. I thank Rob Woodall for leading the effort on the House side. We look forward to continuing to work with our House colleagues to push this envelope until ultimately we get this bill to the floor of the House and the floor of the Senate and see its passage. Thanks, Rob. Now, let me turn to my colleague from the state of Georgia, who is also a strong proponent of the FairTax, Senator Johnny Isaacs.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to join you, and Rob Woodall is doing such a great job in his first term here at the House of Representatives, carrying the banner for the FairTax. You know, anybody that just finished filling out their tax return realizes tax simplification is way overdue. We have a current tax code that punishes productivity instead of taxing discretionary spending, which is what consumption taxes do. That's why it's called a fair tax, because you pay in proportion to what you spend, not in proportion to your productivity. It's important that we do that. Secondly, as Rob said, we have a code that is weighted down with tons of tax gimmicks, tax incentives, tax credits, all designed to cause people to do things, many of them that just don't work. It's time we simplified it, cleaned it up, and made it a simple way to pay your fair share and do it the fair way, the fair tax way. Thank you very much.
Just to tell you about the work going on in the United States Senate, you may think nothing's happening in the United States Senate based on what we talk about in the House, but these two men have put together the largest number of Senate co-sponsors we've ever had on the FairTax since it's been introduced, and I'm grateful to them. This isn't just something that the freshmen are doing. This is something that is coming from the grassroots, and it's touching all parts of this U.S. House of Representatives. We have a number of members of the leadership here in the U.S. House who are co-sponsors of the FairTax. We have our conference secretary, John Carter. We have our Republican Policy Committee Chairman, Tom Price. We have our Joint Economic Committee Vice Chairman, Kevin Brady, all strong supporters of the FairTax. I'd like to turn it over to our conference secretary, Mr. John Carter.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks to our senators and their leadership. We are ready to get the FairTax before the American people. We're ready to have a tax system that is about fairness, not about envy, as the system is being promoted today. George Soros, Warren Buffett, Oprah Winfrey, and even the President of the United States would pay 23% if everybody, as would everybody else in this country, under the FairTax. and it's a consumption tax. It will promote working hard, making a living, and when you go home on the last day of the month, you'll have your whole paycheck in your hand, and you'll be surprised how much you make. This is a great way for us to reform our tax system, and I am 100% in support.
Tom Price represents the 6th District of Georgia and privileged to chair the Republican Policy Committee, and I want to congratulate Rob Woodall and thank him for picking up the mantle from his predecessor, John Linder, and taking it to a whole new level. The folks behind us here, the folks behind me from the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, and just plain old good folks from across this great country understand that today, tax day, is confounding and complicating and contradictory to the American people when they look at the tax code. We have a code right now that punishes all the things that we say that we want, like hard work and investment, success and entrepreneurship. And that's why we support the fair tax. Fair tax is not only fair for the American people, less progressive, less regressive than the current code, and would capture an underground economy that is flourishing. It would be a jobs magnet to the United States. It would reward all the kinds of things that we say that we want: hard work and savings, investment, risk-taking, entrepreneurship. So I can't tell you how proud I am to stand with Rob and my colleagues here today to reignite the push for a tax system that the American people recognize as being fair and true to the principles that made us a great nation. Rob, thank you so much.
I'm Steve King from Iowa, and I've been for the fair tax since about 1980, well before there was a fair tax. And here we are on what is a tax day today, this year on April 17th. It's normally April 15th. It's also the date of Tax Freedom Day by a lot of calculations. I want Tax Freedom Day to be January 1, not April 7th. You know, Ronald Reagan once said, what you tax, you get less of. The federal government has the first lien on all productivity in America. Earnings, savings, and investment, they tax it. They punish our productivity and not our consumption. It needs to be the other way around. That's where our freedom is rooted in it. It frees up our pastors, free speech, the whole configuration of our energy and our minds and our economy that has to first jump through the tax hoop before it can figure out where to invest our dollars. Jobs are with the fair tax, and I stand with the fair tax.
From the 11th District of Georgia, and I stand strongly with my colleague Rob Woodall and his predecessor, Congressman John Linder, Neil Boyd, the Americans for Fair Taxation that's standing behind us, and doing these chants in regard to the fair tax. That's not empty rhetoric. This is an idea whose time has come. It was introduced, 14, 15 years ago. And the fair tax book was written back in 2005 by John Linder and Neil Boyd. The current tax code, you've heard this before, but it's absolutely true. 9 times the thickness of the Bible. Reading the Bible a little bit each day takes me a full year. I don't have 9 years to read the tax code. The fair tax would go on something like this. It's simple, it's understandable. Its time has come. Let's pass the fair tax.
My name is Andrew Crenshaw, and I'm from Florida. And all of you know that the fair tax from the very beginning has been a grassroots effort. A lot of people all across this country woke up one day and said, you know, we're sick and tired of watching billions of dollars and billions of man hours being spent trying to understand and try to comply with our complicated tax code. And so the fair tax was born. And when I came to Congress, there were 7, count them, 7 co-sponsors of the fair tax in the House. Today, Rob, they're over 65 or 66. 67. So we've come a long, long way, but we got a long, long way to go. And it's still going to be a grassroots effort. I know in my state, in Florida, in my community, people meet every week to talk about the fair tax. And so we want to make it more fair, we want to make it more simple, we want to make it more transparent. But when people all across this country continue to get together, to stand up and say, we're going to talk to our members of Congress, we're going to talk to our members of the United States Senate, we're going to change the way we do business. And that's what the fair tax is all about. And let's all work together, we'll make it happen. Thank you.
very easy to support the fair tax because it will do something to make my wife, she leaves the house when I start doing my taxes, as most of us do. It's so complicated. The expense we have in this country to fill out your tax returns now is unbelievable. And the fairness and simplicity of it, I think, is the most important part of it. The American people want this. You have a decision made. You make a decision on how much money you spend, as Dr. Price said. It captures the underground economy. It's simple, it's fair, its time has come, and it's time to pass the fair tax.
Rich Nugent from Florida again. Folks, we have 70,000 plus pages of tax code. You and I cannot understand it, even if we wanted to. But there are some that do, and those are the ones that utilize the loopholes and things not to pay any tax at all. The fair tax is just the right thing to do. It's about cutting the size and scope of government, putting more money back in the pockets of the hardworking Americans that we have, and it's the largest job creator out there. If we can get the federal government off the backs of our small businesses and employers, we all win. So Rob Woodall, who's a freshman colleague of mine, I support you, Rob. Support the fair tax, and let's move this forward.
When you go back many, many years to our founding, there was a word that was depicted in statues. The word was justice. And what was it that justice had when you think of that statue? First of all, you remember the scale in her hand. And then the second thing was, of course, the blindfold. Lady Justice wasn't peeking. Everybody was what you would call equal before the law. Now this fair tax makes everybody equal before the law, so it stands up to that basic standard of what fair should be. Everybody is treated the same way. And what's more, it has a tremendous benefit that many of us would really enjoy seeing, and that's getting rid of the IRS. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Todd. I very much appreciate that. Our colleague from Maryland, Ross Maryland, you have to say a few words.
Thank you so much for holding this news conference. You know, if we went to the fair tax, we could have an increased tax revenue without having an increased tax burden. The tax burden is two things. It's the taxes you pay and the cost of compliance with those taxes. And the cost of compliance is huge. And so the government could get additional monies without you having any additional tax burden if we went to the fair tax. In today's world, we're having a lot of trouble between Republicans and Democrats as to how we face this big challenge of this big deficit we have. If we just went to the fair tax, it would be more tax revenue without any increased tax burden. I don't know of anybody who is opposed to that. And furthermore, it's going to take a long time to figure out whether you're paying more or less taxes under this new system, because it is so different than what we have. It needs a fair tax. I don't know if anybody in America would be happy if we did that. I don't know why we just don't. I've been here 20 years. We've been talking about this. You know, time is running out. Let's do it today. Thanks.
You know, this doesn't happen here on Capitol Hill. That we may work underneath that dome, but the real work takes place in the grassroots across the country. We have several grassroots groups with us. We have Americans for Fair Taxation with us today. We have Dwayne Pardee from the National Taxpayers Union. We have National Small Business Association here, and Todd McCracken. And we also have Hank Johnson, Democrat from the great state of Georgia, talking about how these ideas need to be considered. Hank Johnson.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I know that it's a shock for me to be seen here amongst you. And I'm not here to endorse the fair tax, but I'm here to tell you that we definitely need tax reform, fundamental tax reform in this country. And the fair tax offers an opportunity for us to get into this study of how we want to fundamentally reform our tax code. And so I'm here to tell you that I'm not afraid to listen. I think listening to each other is good. I think that if we don't change our tax system soon, then it's going to continue to hurt prosperity to this nation. So with that, again, I will emphasize I'm not here to endorse the FairTax, but I am here to support efforts like this one, which is led by my friend and Georgia colleague, Rob Woodall, whose district adjoins mine, or my district adjoins his, whichever way you want to look at it. I'm here to support this effort, put this on the table, and to seriously look at it, and let's deal with it. Thank you.
Thinking about how to get this on the table, there has not been any stronger leadership than that from the Joint Economic Committee. We have the Vice Chairman of the Joint Economic Committee, Ken Brady, here with us today.
Thank you. Well, first I want to thank Rob Woodall for his leadership on this effort. Joint Economic Committee recently held a hearing on the FairTax from the standpoint of how do we get our economy moving. I'm convinced the current tax code we have today is a drag on our economy, and not simply in its high rates, but in its forms, its burdensome complexity on families and business. I'm convinced a consumption tax will unleash America's economy, make us the strongest economy in the world, and not just for a few years or until China catches us, but the strongest economy in the world for the next 100 years. Consumption is the right, rather than taxing hard work, investment, and saving, we ought to be taxing consumption. And that will drive our economy for the future. The FairTax, which I'm a co-sponsor of, I believe at this point is the best form of a consumption tax. And as Congress looks at fundamental tax reform, I hope it gives a strong, a serious, thoughtful look at the FairTax going forward. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Jeff. And to get that grassroots perspective, folks have been doing this for a long, long time. National Taxpayers Union. I'd ask its president, Dwayne Party, to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Congressman, and all the other congressmen, co-sponsors of this legislation. The National Taxpayers Union is over 40 years old. We're the oldest grassroots taxpayer advocacy organization in the country, and we've strongly supported the FairTax for over a decade and look forward to engaging in this new debate with this legislation. Our membership strongly will line up in support of this bill, and it was mentioned earlier by a congressman, the compliance costs of the current tax code is something that really needs to be talked about more. We're releasing a study today showing that complying with the federal tax code costs American taxpayers and corporations over 6 billion hours a year, and the compliance costs associated with that is well over $200 billion. That's money that can be put back into the economy under a fair tax system, boost jobs and economic growth, and that's why we're here to speak in support of this very important legislation. And Congressman, we look forward to working with you in your cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. And to close us out today, and our speakers is a real grassroots champion for the FairTax and National Small Business Association, represented by its president, Tom McCracken.
FairTax. The National Small Business Association is proud to have been the first national organization back in 1998 to endorse the FairTax. There really shouldn't be any surprise, I don't think, to anyone that small business is being charged with doing this kind of a system. If you think about it, small businesses, small business owners are the ones who face every aspect of the bill we've got now. They face all the complications of the business side of the bill. They face the individual member tax bill. They are the tax law enforcers and tax collectors, the IRS. They do all the withholding, general tax. This is 1099. They have to comply with every class down of what the IRS goes after. And it's just, in short, and the FairTax clears all that away. It's just gone. All they have is one simple calculation. How much do they sell to end consumer every year? 26%. That's what they got away. And so it's an enormous simplification. Every last minute that small business owners spend worrying with the tax code, complying with the tax code, filling out forms, getting with their employees, doing withholding, because if they're not going to the business, talking to customers, training their employees, you're going to have some business. That's why we're the
co-sponsored fundamental tax reform bill on Capitol Hill in either the House and Senate. In fact, in both the House and Senate. Does anybody have any questions, or have we told the entire story up here today? All right. Thank you all for coming. More importantly, thank the folks back here with FairTax on. This is about the grassroots back home, and you see it here today. Thank you all for coming out. I very much appreciate that.
Good job, Rob.
Hey, Rob, glad we can make it.